Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Anne Frank's diary. Now, Anne Frank's diary is not like any other type of novel. It's not a novel, it's not a book, it's not like a nonfiction or a fiction, anything. It's a diary of pure emotions. Anne Frank was not writing to please or to entertain or to inform anybody. She was writing in her diary about her experiences, and she was using her diary to cope with the oppression of her people. For this reason, I think that Anne Frank's diary should be separated from every other type of book, because every type of book, the authors, when they're writing them, they sit down and they have the idea that millions and millions of people are going to see their works. But Anne Frank, she was writing for herself, her eyes, and her eyes only. So when we're talking about Anne Frank's diary, I think it's important to think of it in a separate light, because it was a diary that was written to help this girl to de-stress or even to express her true feelings about the things that she faced during World War II. You see, when we talk about war, we often talk about the casualties. We talk about the costs and the benefits. We talk about the winners and losers. We talk about the things that the winners gain and the detriments that the losers gain. But we often forget the people. You see, when we look at Anne Frank's diary, we see the people of World War II. We see the 6 million Jewish people that died in concentration camps. We put faces to the 6 million. You see, casualties can be just numbers. But when you put faces to those casualties, the narrative changes. When we look at Anne Frank's story, we see this teenager, just like any other teenager, just like every teenager who goes through changes, emotionally and physically. Anne Frank was just like any other person. And her life was eradicated for literally nothing. Because in a war, everybody loses. In a war, there's going to be casualties on either side. There's always going to be people caught in the crossfire. You see, Anne Frank's diary shouldn't be taken easy, because it really shows us the struggles of war. And for 2+ years, Anne Frank endured a lot. She had to eat rotten food. Her and her family had to eat rotten food to survive. The Frank family and the Vendôme family, they shared this annex that was not created for living conditions, and they tried to survive within this annex. For 2+ years, they had to think quick on different ways to use the bathroom, and they used buckets. They had to think of different ways to eat, to survive, to stay alive, to entertain themselves, to distract themselves. You see, Anne Frank's diary gives war a new face. It doesn't give war a bloody face, but it gives war the human side. People think about the casualties, but they never think about the human side of war, of how war affects human beings, of how war affects the perspective of human beings. You see, Anne Frank had aspirations. She had dreams just like everybody else. That's what her diary proves. The diary proves that just like everybody else, the people that died in the Holocaust, they're not just numbers, they're actual human beings with actual emotions. The development of Anne, her love for Peter, the way she looked at her body and herself, and the way she tried to understand herself and the external world, shows how human she was. And I think when you learn that she died in the Holocaust, you kind of feel the pangs of that, because you become close to her by reading her diary, because it shows you the human that is known by the name of Anne Frank. So her book really gives us an idea of what World War II was for the humans, for the humans who were living during that time, for the Jewish people who were pushed aside, for the Jewish people who were oppressed. Only her father made it out. They all went to concentration camp, but the only one that survived from that annex was Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father. And he lived on to tell the story of Anne Frank. So really, I think that Anne Frank's diary is very special because it's not fiction, it's not nonfiction, it's a book that is about pure emotions. You see, whether you're writing a fiction or nonfiction book, writers and editors, they can add things here or there to make it more presentable to the public eye. But Anne Frank's diary is fundamentally a diary, and that sets it apart from everything else. So when reading Anne Frank, I like to say, don't read it as a novel, don't read it as a book, but read it as this document that showed you a face of a person who suffered through the Holocaust. That's really what goes on within Anne Frank's diary. That's really what goes on within the book. It really gives us an idea of how it felt for Anne Frank, for being taken out of her school, for suffering in an annex for 2+ years, and then for being sent to a concentration camp to die. That is Anne Frank's diary. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.